Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. If you want the best employees, you have to be a rebel, says our guest, Debra Corey, author of Build It, the Rebel Playbook. Debra, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Debra, explain the title, Build It, the Rebel Playbook. Somehow we don't associate rebels with a business organization.
No, and I'm silently giggling here because we had a big debate when we were coming up with the title about whether or not we should use the word rebel, and we went out to lots of people because on one hand we didn't want to, turn people off by the word, but on the other hand we really wanted to tell people and send a strong message that we have to be rebels, that if we just continue doing what we're doing and not challenging the status quo, we're never going to be able to change employee engagement. So we decided to be bold, be a rebel, and use the word.
All right. Nice to talk to a bold person. Now, Debra, employee engagement, is that the same as a happy employee?
There's a lot of discussions about that, and I do believe that they are different. Happiness is very important, and I'd like to think that engaged employees most of the time are happy, but an engaged person is more someone who understands the business. So they understand where the company's going, they understand where they fit in, and they want the company to succeed. So again, often they're happy, but we all have rough times at work when things get challenging or stressful. And if you're engaged, you still can be engaged when you're having one of those rough days and you might not be happy. So slightly different.
Yes, we know about those. Now,
yes, we all have those days.
From a company's viewpoint, what's better about having it's nice. We like people happy. We like them to be engaged, etc. But there's always numbers in the background and stockholders. So impress us with some of those, what should we call them? The metrics, they would call them in sports. How does this affect absence, customer service, things like that?
Yeah, and that's what's so great, because we have been talking about employee engagement for years and years and years, and I don't know how much our businesses, our leaders were listening to us, but as we have more metrics, all of a sudden they're very, very interested. I did read one study where 74% of business leaders felt that engagement was not just important, but was critical to the success of their organization. And the biggest number that I think has made a difference is 2 times higher stock market return. So what they've done is they've looked at companies with high engagement and they've looked at ones with lower engagement, and they've seen that big increase, 2 times stock market return. Also, as you said, there's been various studies which talk about how it reduces absenteeism, it improves innovation, it improves productivity, improves safety, lots and lots of different KPIs depending on your business. And that's really why it's gotten a lot more traction and interest, which is great for us in human resources.
And that 25% less absenteeism, that's a big number if you're running a business. Those people are there, they're active, they're obviously happy being there, so they make that effort to come in. And I guess, as you said before, if that shows up in doubling the stock, that's a really good number.
It does, and it has different types of impact on absence because, the people who are physically and not there, but also if you think about when people are disengaged, and I'm sure we've all experienced people disengaged. So even though some people are physically at work, if you're disengaged mentally, you're not, and you're not providing the right service for your customers, for your clients, and we can all see and feel that when we work with disengaged employees.
Now, you mentioned 71% said employee engagement is critical to success. But then I guess on that same survey, only 24% said they feel they have a highly engaged workforce. So are people ignoring this? Is this something that they talk about, but they don't really get down to doing, or what's the problem?
Well, you look at another survey, Gallup, which is the biggest engagement survey, and the most recent one says that only 30% of people in the U.S. are engaged. So I think the leaders are right. It's pretty close, the numbers. So they're saying 24%, Gallup saying 30%. They're all quite low numbers if you think about it. So it's only, 2 or 3 employees out of 10 who are engaged, which is a low number when we've seen, as you mentioned earlier, the ROIs on engagement.
I'm just thinking, were you a really smart author and you said to yourself, wait a minute, if 70% of the people are not engaged, that's a big audience that I have for my book?
Well, the main reason we did it is because of those numbers, because the numbers aren't changing very much. So it's 30% of people who are engaged right now, and it's only increasing at most 1% a year. And we've been talking about it for years. So the reason we wrote this book really was to just sort of turn things a bit upside down. As I said earlier, challenge the status quo and say, come on, guys, if we're going to increase it more than 1%, and if our leaders who believe it's important are going to see results, we really need to start thinking and acting differently. And that's, we talked about rebels. That's exactly what rebels do.
Now, we always have a new group that kind of comes into the picture, namely that millennial group. Is this a millennial thing? Does this have anything to do? Not that it doesn't have to do with them. Of course, they're part of the workforce. But is this something they've brought with them, or is it just being noticed more now?
No, I mean, each generation has their own challenges. And you are right. The millennials are looking for different things to engage them. So when you look at the studies, there are some differences between millennials and some of the other generations. But we all want the same thing. I mean, if you really just take a step back and you think about what engagement is, I talked about the definition, but you can feel engagement. Everybody wants to feel like they're making a difference in the world and that they're enjoying their jobs and that they're really contributing. And I don't think it's just millennials that feel that way. I think every generation wants to do that. Now, you engage them slightly different, but we all want the same outcome as individuals.
And having gone through your book, I will tell you, I'm looking at it, I'm saying, of course, why wouldn't you want to be more engaged? It's more fun. The day goes quicker. You enjoy your job and you're being more productive. You're showing up more often, as the less absenteeism shows. You're treating the customers better because you're happy. And of course, this is what we want in the world. This is what everybody is writing about from one direction or the other. And while we're talking about it, I want to mention to our audience, the name of your book is Build It, the Rebel Playbook for World-Class Employee Engagement. It's by our guest, Debra Corey, Corey. Debra, would you tell us where we can get the book? And is there a website where we can find out more?
Yeah, so you can buy the book through anywhere that you would go, whether it's online or in a bookstore. It's published by Wiley. We've also created a website called rebelplaybook.com, and the reason is that we wanted to continue to provide additional information. So we finished the book, and we were continuing to talk to innovative companies. We're talking to rebels, and we're sharing their stories on the website, either through plays, which is what we call stories in the book, or we're doing lots of video interviews. So lots of fresh content out there to help people and inspire people. And
it's a fun book to read. And as I was saying to you before the show, we get a lot of books for the show that authors send us to take a look at. And this is one that I was anxious to speak to you about because it's interesting. There's a lot of techniques and ideas you put in here that are very easy to put into anywhere from a 4 or 5 person dental office to the kind of corporations we usually think of in the hundreds or thousands of people. It's not something that is difficult to do. And I guess you can get those employees engaged and seeing that these innovations are coming about and actually seeing numerical results a lot quicker than with many of the other things that are promoted in business.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you said that because we really put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that it wasn't just strategy because, again, we've been talking about it for so long. So we tried to have a balance. We were even very analytical with the word counts. So do we have enough words that we use for practical tips to your point, things that you can go and do tomorrow? And then the plays, half of the book are plays. So, again, we tried to have this balance to make it usable.
Now, you mentioned that engaged employees build stronger, more resilient organizations in 3 ways. And I think this comes early in your book around page 5 or 6. What are the ways they build a better company?
Well, again, if you think about what engagement is, engaged employees make better decisions. And the reason they make better decisions is because when you're engaged, you understand more about what's going on in the organization, whether it's the customers or everything else going on around you. They also are more productive, and we've talked about that before, because it's not just working more hours, but again, and they know what's going on. They're not distracted by things that are going on, and they're really efficient in what they're doing. So that returns those 2 times higher stock market profitability. And the last thing is they innovate more. And if we looked at businesses who have not succeeded over the years, innovation is so important. And the reason why engaged employees innovate more is if you think about it, innovation is risky. And, you could be shot down for your ideas. And only if you're truly committed and engaged with the organizations are you going to be putting those ideas through. So that's really how we define what an engaged employee delivers to your organizations. And I think, as you said earlier, all companies would definitely be much better with employees who make better decisions, more productive, and innovate more.
And I was telling you before the show, just paying attention to the points you make in your book, I'm watching organizations and I'm calling a doctor's office. Number one, they put me on hold while telling me how important I am to them. The hold was, and in offices today, you can put someone on hold, but you can say it'll be at 2 minutes or we'll call back or something. This is a large-scale organization that could have done that. But no, I sat there for 6 or 7 minutes. And I guess the real joke was on me because I was calling them to tell them I'm going to have to change an appointment weeks ahead, just so they didn't have a space in their schedule and someone else could use it. They could help someone. They could not lose the income, etc. And it was almost a comedy of errors. It was a comedy of errors, and I won't use any names, but I think you're going to use it in your next book based on our conversation before the show. Now, Debra, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, but I think we do the same thing in business. So we tell our employees that they're important, and we mean it, but then we go and we do things that just don't communicate that same message. So maybe very complex policies that we put in place, or we don't give them interesting jobs, or we don't recognize them. So same thing that happened with your dentist office. We say one thing and we don't truly do what we mean.
By the way, I think for anybody who has a business, if you have a telephone message or one of those nice loops that go around, keep saying things while people are on hold, listen to it sometime and realize that's what your customers are hearing, and they're probably making jokes about it, as I am, for weeks afterward, because a lot of it just really doesn't fit in. It's either dated, doesn't make sense, or is not being played out in reality. If I'm so important to you, maybe talk to me. Don't keep an endless loop going around telling me the services you offer, et cetera, et cetera. Debra, one of the things you mentioned in the book, which is surprising, you say the bar is low. Something like a 20% improvement can give us a great competitive advantage. Can you talk about that?
Well, definitely. Again, if you look at the numbers, 2 times higher stock market return. I'm sorry, I keep saying that number, but it's just so powerful.
That's persuasive. That's a great number.
I know. I want people to hear that.
I want my IRA in an engaged company. That's where it should be.
Ooh, I like
401k, yeah.
Good way of thinking of it.
That's right.
But if you think about engaged employees and the 3 things that I talked about, if you had another 20% of people who were doing that, that's 20% more of your customers who are satisfied, and that can make such a big difference to your organization.
Now, Debra, is this, to get an engaged employee, is that, how can we put it this way, is that related to income, bonuses, incentive pay, things like that?
It's interesting you say that, because we have a model called the Engagement Bridge, and it has 10 elements, and pay and benefits are one of the elements of the 10. And yes, it's important, but, when you look at what's really happening, it's not what's really driving and engaging employees. We call them the supporting elements, and you need to have it in place or the engagement bridge will fall over. But what people are looking for more are things like open and honest communication. That builds trust. They want to understand where the company is going. They want a job that's interesting and have that autonomy, more recognition. All the other different elements of the bridge are absolutely important and critical to engagement.
Open and honest communication? Do companies really do that? Did you find one? I'm not asking for a lot. Just, is there one out there that does that?
Well, I can tell you my company does it.
Okay.
So we definitely.
Well, you wrote the book, so that's not fair. You know the rules.
Yes. No, there are other companies out there, and actually there's some really good examples. One of a lovely play in the book is about a company in Australia, GM Holden, who were announcing that they were closing their plant 4 years before they were actually going to close it. And they were very open, honest, and transparent. They actually told their employees 4 years before they closed, which most organizations would never, ever do. but they really wanted to engage their employees during those 4 years. And the way they explained it to me is they wanted their last car to be their best. And they all worked together to do it. And they, again, open, honest,